Hi, I'm Paul Nicol from Freedom Kayaks. Just making a short video just to clarify some little basic bits and pieces here on behalf of my customers. Basically, the epoxy mix. What do we use the epoxy for and how do we make the mixes up? First thing is to work out the ratio. I use an epoxy mixer, it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So we have 1 part of this to half a part hardener. So if I measured out on my scales, nice accurate scales, so you can measure out quantities. So if I measured out 30 grams of my resin, I'd go for 15 grams of my hardener. Using scales, the best and most accurate way to ensure that your epoxy is mixed correctly. So I've just measured out 30 grams of the resin. I can just then reset onto my scales here, and then it's 15 grams of the hardener. Nicely measured out. So we've got the accuracy of the quantities that we want. We just now need to ensure we get the mixing right. You can't over mix it, but you can under mix it. Make sure you go round the sides, whatever you're mixing in, and down into the bottom corners. And it's worth just spending some time giving this a thorough mixing, ready for use. This mix that we're making at the moment is just a pure epoxy mix, nice clear epoxy mix there, which we're going to use for fibreglassing. Well, the fibreglassing we're just going to demonstrate on here is a hatch. It's a hatch opening. I've laid the fiberglass at a 45-degree angle just because it'll make it easier for me to manipulate into the corners. You can just start wetting out with our epoxy. Using a paintbrush in this area here, just due to the size of the area that I'm doing and the manipulation that I'll need to get the fiberglass into all the corners. The purpose of this demonstration is just to demonstrate. There's a fiberglass. There's our epoxy. It's going nice and clear. We can just work our way around that. Whether I'm doing a hatch cover or whether I'm doing a deck, makes little difference. You'll obviously need maybe more than 1 coat to wet out fully. The next mix that I'm going to demonstrate is a mix I'd use for gluing joints together. So I've made the epoxy up in the same way, mixed up. Going to give it a good stir to ensure that it gets all mixed together. Next thing I'm going to then add, and there's various components you can add to epoxy for all sorts of difference, but keeping it to the basics of wetting out fiberglass, which I've shown, gluing. I use a West Systems here 405 filleting blend. Great general purpose. I'm not going to put too much of that in first because we need to get the consistency right for this. A lot of the things for this, consistency is everything. At the moment, exceptionally runny still. Can always add more, can't take it away. Consistency is important on the gluing because what we don't want is air bubbles and voids within the glue when the bits are stuck together. Still quite runny. Tend to find with this these mixes, suddenly you'll reach the point. With a bit of practice, I don't measure these out, I'll have made up the amount of epoxy that I actually need, and then I'll make the consistency that I know I want. This now is just starting to get to it flows, as we can see, this flows, but it's not going to run away when I try and use it. Just for the demonstration, I've got two bits here. We'll pretend that I want to glue those together. I'll use the epoxy mix for that. Both of these I've just wetted out first with some basic epoxy. So before I make that mix, I've wetted these with epoxy. Best if you can do it. If you can't, don't worry. So it's spreading onto there what you want to glue, the area you want to glue. I always tend to go more, because what you don't want to do is create voids within there. So make sure it's a nice mix. I'll expect some to come out the sides that I can then clean up. And then it'll be a case of putting the two pieces together and squeezing together. This way we ensure we don't have any voids within that joint that we're making between these two bits. Those are now glued. If this was for real, you'd be checking that they've positioned correctly. Those are now glued, there'll be no voids within there, and put it somewhere to dry. When it's dry, it'll be exceptionally hard. So that's gluing joints. The next bit is filleting. So I've still got some of the glue mix made up in here. If I try and fill it with that, it won't stay on the spoon. There's no way it's going to stay where I want it to on a fillet. So I need to take it to the point where it will stay that sort of thickness on the spoon. The runnier it is, the easier it is to spread. However, you'll spread it nicely and it will just end up where you don't want it. So I just need to take that thicker with my filleting blend. Again, adding a bit at a time, ensuring it's stirred in well. We don't want to leave any pockets of it's thicker, but still not thick enough. Still moving. Again, practice will allow you to consistently, repeatedly make this up. But again, it's a good way to check your mix. That is this nearly there. Slightest little bit of movement. This is a relatively thick mix now, but will be spreadable. Don't make it too thick, or else it'll want to ball rather than spread. Take the thickness of your epoxy, sorry, your fillet. Slight little bit of sag still. At this stage, the slightest little bit of powder will make all the difference. You can see on the back of the spoon here, we've got a bit sticking out. Slightest little bit of sag on that bit, but on the bit on the front, There's nothing on the front. Slight little bit of, but the thickness of an epoxy fillet, that's going to be fine. I say, the mantra I work by is, if it runs off the spoon, it's going to run off your fillet. Well, there's two ways to epoxy fillet. One's this way, where I've marked out the sides of where I want to fillet, or the edge of the fillet, with a masking tape. I do this in areas where I want it to be as perfect as possible. So in cockpit, things like that. Allows you then just to push your fillet in, work your way along where you want to fillet. Baby spoon works very well. You can work quite a nice fillet in. Just clean that off a little bit. There we go. So there's your nice fillet. Once you've done that, I can then peel off my masking tape, and there is a very nice little fillet. It's going to stay there. It's not going to slump down onto my bottom panel because we've checked the consistency. So I'd use that. The downside, and there's always downsides to everything, is that fillet will need sanding before I fiberglass to get the nicest, neatest fillet. But it's worth it in the cockpit to get the best fillet possible. The other way to fillet, if you're in areas there where you're not necessarily going to see, it's just to fillet by freehand. And again, same technique, but without the masking tape. What I'm then going to do is you can then fiberglass straight onto this, so you miss out a sanding step. When you fiberglass onto it, you need to be careful that you don't push your nicely formed fillet all over the place. Make sure when you're filleting, you push it well deep into the V of the joint. There we go, there's a nice fillet. That's perfectly acceptable enough. Again, I wouldn't necessarily do that in the cockpit because I want a beautiful fillet in the cockpit to show my best work. But that's a perfectly acceptable fillet there. What I could now get, once I've filleted my section, is now fiberglass straight away onto it. So I could fillet all my area up that I need to, then I could lay my fiberglass onto my section that I wanted, and just carefully, and it's the carefully bit, lay that onto my fillet there. I could then make myself up just a plain epoxy mix and now wet that one out, and the whole section in one stage will then be filleted and fiberglassed. And that's fiberglassing, filleting and gluing with epoxy.